When I was working on my PhD, I discovered that I had a different ideology of how I work best compared to some of my classmates. So we had taken a course on software design, and there were a bunch of group projects, which I used to really despise, and I'll get to why in a second. So I would get this project, and my thoughts would be well ahead of some of my classmates. But unfortunately, I had a very hard time communicating what I was doing. And the other problem I noticed I had was that I often worked best when I was relaxed. When the four of us, or however many were in that group, when we were at the cafeteria eating lunch, oh my God, that's when my best ideas come. But you know what? Most of my classmates don't want to hear about the project when they're eating. And I really felt at a social disadvantage that I worked so differently from all of my classmates. To make a long story short, if I'm not mistaken, I ended up getting a B in that class. My classmates got an A just because they were more social. Now fast forward 10 years later, now that I'm a professor, I try to make sure that my students don't fall behind over little quirks like that. I have a few students who behave like how I used to behave, and I can relate very much to them. And I always make sure they have another chance to make up for differences in their effort. Now, we need people like that in our society. There are people who hide at home and come up with the best things in the world. And unfortunately, sometimes we don't value that as much as we really should. I think that's a big reason why the United States is lagging behind in education. We fail to recognize a lot of talent in this country. Now, fast forward a year after that homework assignment, I had just broken up with my girlfriend, and I went out to a coin show by myself. I talked about this in other videos. I just celebrated the anniversary of doing that, and I had a good time. And around that time, I started riding my bicycle everywhere. I rode it from Rochester, New York to Niagara Falls, back to Rochester, and I remember one year I got really gung-ho about wanting to ride 24,903 miles around the world. And I kept track of how many miles I rode. I think I got up to 4,000 or 5,000 before I lost count. Now, a lot of times people just saw me as crazy. You know, what's really funny is I did a little bit of an experiment. Now that I'm working, a lot of times when I have a girlfriend, and I want to leave work on time, people seem to accept that, you know, even if it's to do something really silly with the girl, right? If I want to leave work on time to go write a computer game or to pursue another hobby or anything else, right? To get some good sleep, right? I haven't been sleeping well, right? You know, if I leave work on time to do that, that's a whole different story, right? Leave work to go see your girlfriend, A-okay. Right? And it just goes to show that if you don't fit the mold, you're out. Right, when I was in middle school, when I was in junior high, I had written a computer program to calculate pi to 100,000, a million digits. I can't remember what computers were capable of at the time. I was using the arctangent series, if you're curious about that. Now, some of my classmates had other interesting science projects, right? They always got all the hype about that, right? Everybody was like, "Did you hear? John did something, you know, with some kind of explosions or some kind of he made X-rays in his home with electricity." And nobody wanted to talk about how I calculated pi to 100,000 or a million digits, right? And we just don't like to accept people who don't fit the mold, right? Or when I was in high school, it was impossible to go to prom by yourself, right? Nowadays, I'm recommending a lot of my students, right? I do private tutoring, to go to prom by themselves, and they do it, and usually the stories are not bad, right? When I was in high school, that was impossible. Fortunately, society has shifted somewhat, but it's a very slow shift, right? I'll be pleased if I see some semblance of equality in my lifetime. Anyway, DLM, 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 DLM. Thanks for watching.